Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For this lesson today, we're going to be looking at a specific form of linear equations called slope-intercept form. And you're going to learn a quick, easy way to graph these linear equations whenever they're written in this form. So what does slope-intercept form look like? Well, this is the actual formula for slope-intercept form. It says y equals mx plus b. Now there's no numbers there, but those letters represent numbers. And we'll get to those later on here. But before we do that, I want to introduce us to these, the x and y intercepts. And those are going to play an important role in how we're graphing linear equations with both slope-intercept form and later on in standard form. So what do I mean by an x-intercept? Well, that linear equation on the graph, the x-intercept is wherever that line that we've graphed crosses over the x-axis. So if this is our graphed line, you will see that right here is our x-axis, and where that spot crosses over it is our x-intercept. Same thing with our y-intercept. The y-intercept is where the line crosses over your y-axis. So on that line again, you can see this is the y-axis, and where that graphed line crosses over the y-axis is our y-intercept. So, back to slope-intercept form. We have that equation, y equals mx plus b. So let's figure out what some of these letters represent. Now, we already know that the letter m is a symbol for slope. So in this equation, or in this form, the m represents the slope of that line. The x and the y are the coordinates. They're going to be the solutions to that line. They're what we have to find out. And then the b in this form represents the y-intercept, where that line crosses over the y-axis. Now, if you have an equation and it is in slope-intercept form, you can graph it without having to do anything else because you know the y-intercept and you know the slope. And if you have those two things, you can easily graph these equations. So how do we do that? Well, first, let's practice finding the slope and the y-intercepts. So that's what it's asking us just to do here. Find the slope and the y-intercepts of the linear equations. So in this problem right here, y equals 4x minus 5. My slope is right here in front of the x, because that's where the m is, in front of the x. So my slope is 4. My y-intercept is right here. It's whatever's after the x. If there's a minus sign there, that means that the y-intercept is a negative 5. So here, my slope, m is in front of the x. So my slope is negative 7. My y-intercept, b is at the end, is 12. And then over here, that's going to be a plus 2, I believe. Let's find out. Nah, minus 2. All right. So my slope is negative 4/5, because that's where the m is. And then my b, my y-intercept, I said was negative 2. All right, so now that you know where to find both the slope and the y-intercept when it's written in slope-intercept form, now's when we can easily graph these. So if this is my linear equation, y equals 1/2 x plus 3. My slope is 1/2. My y-intercept is 3. So what you will need to do to start by graphing this is graph the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is at 3. So 3 on the y-axis. That's where this line is going to cross over. So our y-intercept is 3. So on the y-axis, I'm at 3. Now, we need at least 2 points to make a line, correct? Well, since we have 1 point already, we can get a second point by using our slope, by counting our rise over run to find the next point along the line. So from this point that we've already graphed, I'm going to go up 1 over 2. So from here, I'm going to go up 1 and over 2. And there's my second point. If you want to make sure your line's going to be straight, you can do that again. So from this point, up another 1. Whoops, I did that wrong. Go back, go back. All right, let's try this again. So my slope is up 1 over 2. I only went up 1 over 1. So from here, up 1 over 2. Then let's do this again. Up 1 over 2. You can draw your line from 2 points. I find it easier to make a straighter line if I have 3 points drawn. But all I did was use the y-intercept of 3 and our slope of 1 over 2. Up 1 over 2. And I know I went up 1 because it's a positive for the rise. I know I went to the right 2 because it's a positive for the 2. And then that makes our line right there. So let's try another one. Let's identify our slope. Our slope is -2. Now, -2 means the same as -2 over 1. That way we have our rise and we have our run. And then B is -5. So to graph this, you first graph your y-intercept. My y-intercept, or B, is at -5. So on the y-axis, I find -5. And this time, I should have chose a better example for us. You're technically going to go down 2 over 1. But if we go down 2, we're going to be off of the graph. So here's where you can switch this. Instead of putting the negative sign with the top number, you can put it with the bottom number. So that's the same as 2 over -1. So instead of going down 2 for the rise and over 1, I can go up 2, but then since I have a negative on the run, I have to go back 1. I'm going to get a third point, up 2, back 1. So actually maybe it was a good thing I had this example, because you will run into problems like these where if you did it the way it's written, it would run off the graph. -2 divided by 1 is -2. 2 divided by -1 is -2. So in the slope, in the fractions, it doesn't really matter where the negative goes. It can go at the top number. It can go at the bottom number. It will get you the same slope of a line. Next one, let's identify our slope, 2 over 5. Let's identify our y-intercept, -1. What's our first step? First step is to plot our y-intercept. So along the y-axis, I'm going to put our point at -1. Then I'm going to use the slope from there. My rise is 2, up 2. My run is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now here, if I put another point, I'd be off the graph. Remember, you can make a straight line with only 2 points. So from here, we can connect our line. So now we've graphed that linear equation. Another example. Slope is 1 over 3. Our y-intercept is 3. What's our first step? Graph the y-intercept. So along the y-axis, I'm going to put it at 3. Then from there, to get my second point, I count from that y-intercept my slope. I'm going up 1 over 3. Up 1 over 3. I'm going to do a third point. Up 1 over 3. And there's our line for that equation. All right, so we just took a look at what standard form is, or what slope-intercept form is. We took a look at what the M represents, the slope, what the B represents, the y-intercept, and we learned how to graph by graphing the y-intercept first, and then graphing a second point using the slope. Go ahead back into Google Classroom, and you can work through today's homework. If you get stuck, please refer back to this video. If you still have questions, then you can reach out to me. We'll see you next time.